The following is an excerpt from our office hours segment on June 12th, 2024. So, just about 1 month ago. As we all know, the IWMs and the MDYs have soared to the upside. We have been highlighting the strong likelihood of a bounce back in the breadth to the upside, and our askSlim cycle analysis was indicating a bottom that was due in that late June to July time period in both the IWMs and the MDYs. So we were looking for them to get a surge higher. And what I wanted to highlight is what we were seeing at the time. The reason I'm doing this is so that way we can do pattern recognition for the future. These things happen over and over and over again, and it is really useful to study what we were looking at the time and then store that in our minds for the future. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at our overview of both the SPYs, MDYs, and the IWMs. Okay, so this is our both weekly and daily cycle analysis for the SPY with the weekly on the left, daily on the right as usual. Let's go ahead and pull up the weekly chart. And what we see really hasn't changed. We're in a rising mode here. We had this green track, which I haven't changed, targeting around 551, 56. It does look quite likely that we're headed towards that area. No obvious violations below key lows and key swing lows or key fib levels. That 78.6 is down here at 504.62. Jump over to the daily chart. Now, Apple had a very swamp cycle on the daily, almost impossible to read in real time. I've seen so many WWDCs. This is probably one of the most unusual ones in terms of the price action going into it, and obviously the move after that. That just really gives you a sense for the times that we're in terms of AI and the kind of buying that you can see, as we've seen in the semis, and now we're seeing there in Apple just on the news that OpenAI is going to be integrated into their new models, which is really so interesting. I just saw a massive buying spree and a very hard to read daily low. All of that is simply to say that this most recent spurt, while it looks nominal, as we know, was massive in Apple. Apple had a super swamp cycle on the daily. Look at this chart. This is about as rare as you will ever see in Apple. As many of you have been, I'm sure, as well, have betrayed Apple for a good part of 15 years. This is about as swamped of a cycle as I've ever seen. And just a massive, massive move higher from 190 to almost 220 plus, right? Incredible. And we're in a rising mode, obviously, still not seeing any reason to think that this is a top quite yet. And if you jump over to the SPYs once again, you can see a pop that is obviously more muted, but a pop nonetheless off of that Apple trough. So that's why I've drawn that down and up to show that that was the Apple low. What I've overlaid the MDY analysis that I've had on the charts for some time. The reason I'm doing that is just go back, just look at the influence to me of this really long 55 bar cycle. Okay, I know this is zoomed out, but I just want to show you when the MDY bottoms. We're going back to 7/14/2022. MDY trough here in green. Look at the influence on the SPY. MDY trough here. SPY had one final downtick and then formed its low. MDY bottom here. SPY, bottomed right there, turned up. MDY bottomed here. SPY bottomed right there and turned up. MDY bottomed here. SPY turned down and then had a really solid rally up. Move forward. MDY bottomed here. Bottom on 8/18/23, turned up. MDY bottom had an ideal trough, again, right here, around 11.6. This bottom was on 10.27, not unreasonable, and we turned up. Okay, move forward. MDY bottomed here, a very swamp cycle in the SPY, really very hard to read, obviously, and turned right back, but that pullback came right into the trend, right? So it's interesting, the influence on the SPYs as it links to the MDY cycle bracket. A bottom, a pullback trend, then look at the move after the MDY bottom. Look at how much that rally carried it higher. Move forward. MDY bottomed here, had a head. Keep in mind, these are ideal troughs. The actual troughs are going to vary, but there's clear influence here to me. 419, and then a solid move higher. Move forward. What are we setting up for? In my mind right now, we're in this move right here. We're in the SPYs, just seeing swamp cycles after swamp cycles, right? And keep in mind the context. We saw pullbacks to trend, buy signals on the PO, pullback to trend, buy signal 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 on the PO, right? You're seeing a theme here. So that's where we are right now. Now, the bias is obviously positive. It doesn't take a genius to tell you that. There's a 78.6 at 514. I'm sorry, 549.18. Drawn from this minor low to that minor high to that next minor low. That's this black cycle bracket. That's really the only clear one that I see right now on the SPYs. So that's all I've left on the chart. Keep in mind the MDY. So these SPYs are trending higher into this, right? If the MDY has a bottom that's due, again, end of June, early July, somewhere around there, let's just say, what's the price action? Let's just say SPYs, vacillate a bit higher here, and then we get a, just like this, a swamped move down into that rising trend. Just imagine all three EMAs trending up, and you see the MDY bottom and turn up. Well, we can look for the MDY to turn up in addition to the SPYs. I still think the MDY will do a little bit better on a relative basis given the move down in the MDYs, which I'll show you. The MDY, I've highlighted this a lot. Okay, so that the MDY, haven't had to make any changes here really. This is a 30-bar cycle bracket. We did turn up. We did not make a new high, as the highest probabilities would have indicated. We had a test of the high, and now we're holding in. So this looks like very much like a neutral pattern to me right now, given that we have not made a higher high and we are holding inside above the 78.6 at 523.98. If we were to lose that, I would get a little bit more concerned here in the MDY. If you look back at this area right here, see how we formed a low, then just chopped. We didn't lose the 78.6 on a closing basis, and then we turned up. So it's important for us to hold above that 523.98 area here for the mid caps. If we jump over to the daily chart, this is the same cycle bracket. It was either 54 or 55 bars. Right now it's at 55. Doesn't change anything really at all. There's a trough that's due somewhere around this 628 to 716 area. This rally, what's interesting in the MDY, and I was watching it closely because I do have the EMD on my charts as well. The MDY filled right at the 61.8 fib. Again, our key lines in the sand are always the 61.8, then the 78.6. In the MDY, we got right to the 61.8. In the IWMs, which I'll show you in a second, we only tapped to the tick the 78.6 and failed. I'm always watching those levels, and we failed right at it and then turned back down. If you want to have a clear shift, you have to get a daily close over the 78. So the fact that that didn't happen, and then obviously we have seen the action since then, is really confirming we're still in that corrective period in all likelihood, and are poised for at least a test of that old low at 528.39. I would like to see it hold above this low here. I mean, this 78.6, sorry, at right around that 524-ish area. If we jump over now to the IWMs. Okay, so this is obviously a little bit weak still. You can see we are boxed in just like the MDY, holding inside of the 78.6 on the upside, 78.6 on the downside. Now, this one did get a close over by a few pennies, but then failure. It's just not getting over it on a closing basis. If it can at this point, 207.50, I'd be very interested in looking at this long for a target of around 216. On the downside, you have to hold above the 78.6 at right around 195.40-ish. Now, there's this out of phase low that I'm seeing on the charts that has a low that's due right around that, we'll call it July time period. This is not going to be a perfect alignment. Just like this one is a little bit early. This one's on time. This one's on time. This one's on time. Go back. This one's a little bit late versus that minor low. It's just to help me to get a sense for that generalized timing for when that next uptick should happen in the IWMs, and that indicates somewhere around that July to August time period. So with that as the premise, I then jump over to the daily chart, and I've just overlaid the same MDY 54 bar on this chart just to get a sense for, is there any influence here? And I think there is. Zoom out. You can see these timing lines pretty consistent. That did mark the low. This one marked the low. This one was very close. This one did. This one did. This one did inside of a couple of days. This one did back here on Jan of 24. This one did on April of 24, right? So there's some influence here, and there's an important uh, signal to me that this low should form 614 to right around 716. Somewhere around there, we should have a bottom that forms here in the IWMs. This action, look at that failure. Zoom in a little bit. This is so interesting to me because look at the number of failures versus the 78.6 right here, right here, right here. Do you think this is an important level or not? That's right at 207.24. You can see that for yourself. We got right up to it, did not trade over it, and then turned right back down. That's so interesting to me. It tells me that uh, we're really poised for a move through this old low at 198.42, which is right at the 61.8. I just like the MDYs. I'd like to see it hold above the 78.6 at 195.36. If that can't happen, this is going to weaken the pattern a bit. But I will still be looking for a bounce back to the upside. All right, so let's look there at the IWMs. Again, failed right at that 78.6. Actually, 4 touches. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if this can turn up and we do end up revisiting that 78.6, there's very likely going to be a squeeze higher if that were to occur. Okay, so just keep this on the radar. Still in a sell to rally mode, it looks like here in the IWMs until this trough forms. That's not due for another couple of weeks, really.